there's a nice blooper. Good day folks, Jordan here with a new software overview video. Today we're looking at Ubuntu 12.10 Quantal Quetzal, released on the 18th of October 2012. This is a bit of a boring release, so I'm going to try to get through everything as quickly as I can so we can get on with the operating system overview itself. So, without further ado, let's get into what's new with Ubuntu 12.10. Some of the improvements in Ubuntu 12.10 included an improved boot up sequence and a new login screen. Or maybe it was improved login screen. Well, I don't know, we'll see when we get into the operating system. I've only briefly looked at this and that was like a week ago, so take my word for it. We'll probably have a surprise Jordan later in the video. Another improvement was Unity 2D was actually dropped and the requirements to run Unity 3D are actually lowered. Which is interesting because I thought that the approach to Unity 2D really wasn't that bad, but a lot of computers that are coming out these days have 3D accelerated cards, and the machines that were not able to run Unity 3D or run Unity 3D very well at this point in time were starting to drop because, of course, Linux was starting to go 64-bit. Most of what you were wanting to run would be on a 64-bit computer. Most 64-bit computers, in fact, probably all 64-bit computers, have a 3D accelerated video card of some kind in it. So, really, why would you support even older systems that couldn't run the 3D user interface? I mean, less and less people were starting to use Pentium 4s and Pentium 3s and Celerons from the Socket 478 generation, the old AMD Socket A systems that may or may not have run Linux, and people are moving on to newer systems such as Ivy Bridge-based Intel Core series or the AMD FX platform. Or if you're a slightly older person, well, that does apply too, but not in this kind of demographic. But if you're using, say, an older Athlon 64 system based on a Socket AM2, or maybe even if you were really going for longevity, you were on Socket 939 still, which some people were in 2012. Let's say maybe you were on Socket 775 still, which many people were still on Socket 775 back in the day because it was just that popular. It was that common. It supported pretty much everything Intel from the late 2000s up until Socket 1156, I believe. So, there's no reason to have the Unity 2D support in there if your platform itself already supported 3D. So it just didn't make sense for them to continue supporting it. I know that was quite a long tangent, my apologies, but I kind of wanted to get into that a little bit more because it really was a decent improvement. Probably not for everybody because, again, people would have to upgrade, but, I mean, you're using a system for like 2002 on 2012 Linux. I mean, what are you doing? We'll just put it that way. Tech, advances. You kind of have to keep up with it. There's an interesting improvement where the physical address extension is turned on by default. Now, the physical address extension, for those who don't know, helps to allocate memory on a 32-bit system. So, for example, if you have a 32-bit system, like a 32-bit copy of Microsoft Windows, for example, you'll notice that if you have 4 gigabytes of RAM in your computer and you run a 32-bit Windows version, you'll see that most of the time you'll only get 3.25 gigabytes of RAM accessible. And that's not a limitation of Windows per se, although it is kind of. It is actually more a limitation of the 32-bit addressing that is used. So, a physical address extension, to put it really basically, and I mean seriously basically, because I could go on a while about a physical address extension probably in the technical terms, but to keep it simple, stupid, basically, a physical address extension tries to help allocate more RAM to a 32-bit system, which can't allocate all 4+ gigs of RAM that it has. Now, this doesn't apply to every system, the artificial 32-bit RAM limitation, because in some cases, some systems, they have shared video memory, and thus that 3.25 gigabyte approximate maximum on a 32-bit version of Windows would be a lot lower. But how does that apply to Linux? Well, a lot of people were using 32-bit Linux, so the same limitation applied. And, you needed a physical address extension to help out with RAM allocation. So essentially, they were just trying to help 32-bit users or people who were having to run 32-bit operating systems on a 64-bit system for compatibility reasons, to give them a little bit more memory and whatnot. And, that was something that many CPUs from approximately 2005 and onward had built in. So it was a pretty nice convenience feature. And for those systems that could not turn on the physical address extension, and I know for a fact this included the older Pentium M's, because many of them did not have the physical address extension compatibility that I think Linux needed. And this applies for modern day Linux. Let's say if I wanted to install Ubuntu 18.04 long-term support, because that's one of the last 32-bit modern Linuxes you can download, as far as I'm aware. Well, I have to go in and toggle the force physical address extension switch by default inside of the boot menu in order for it to boot up, because if I don't, it comes up with an error message. So, yeah, anyway, that's enough of that topic. An interesting change is that Ubuntu 12.10 could not fit on a CD by default. 12.04 more than likely was the last one to fit on a standard CD without, use of extreme compression. Now, at the time, of course, this is probably still a thing today, they use the deflate compression in order to compress the installation medium onto an installable piece of media, and they distribute it via ISO, the standard disk image format used for CDs and DVDs and Blu-rays today. So it no longer fit on a CD using the deflate compression method. However, this was fixed later with third-party projects that used a different form of compression. I think they used like LZMA2 compression to compress the files even more compact, which, it does work that way, but you don't really want to do it very often if you want mission-critical data compression. Because, you risk the reliability factor of the compression actually decompressing itself afterwards. But I digress. But they were able to make it fit onto a compact disc, once again, using that form of compression, which is pretty impressive, honestly. I mean, data compression has come a long way ever since the 1980s and the 1990s. So, yeah, just take it for what it is. That's what happened back in the day. I don't know if you could actually still download that. I highly doubt it. And besides, most PCs nowadays boot from USB anyway, so it's more convenient to just make a USB stick than burn a DVD, although in some semi-rare cases a DVD is more convenient because you might not have the utility to make the disk image onto a USB stick. I can vouch for that kind of scenario. I've been in that many times. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Another interesting change, well, actually two of them. First of which, the Nautilus file manager, which Ubuntu uses, they had 3.4 put into 12.10 at the very least, as the newer versions actually deleted features that Ubuntu presumably used. So that was pretty interesting. They used a slightly older version of the file manager to keep some features that Ubuntu users actually used. I don't know if that changed in later versions. I would guess so, or maybe they baked in their own features that the later versions removed. Not too sure about that, but in my notes, I noted that they used a slightly older version to keep features that Ubuntu users used, presumably, because that's the thing. And then also, a cool thing is, in this release, they introduced what's known as Ubuntu web apps. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to demonstrate those in this video, but my guess is it's sort of like the take on, well, modern-day progressive web apps in Windows 10, for example. Here's a screenshot of Twitter. Or maybe something else that I can't think of off the top of my head. You could probably insert your app name here or something like that. But basically, it's like a web wrapper, but it's in a very small application that you can download, which means you don't have to automatically open up your web browser to go to a particular site to access the same content or functionality, when you can just have a tiny little web applet that will load all that stuff for you, which is pretty convenient. And of course, it can be more secure this way because it can be a sandbox app, and thus any incoming or outcoming connections are all firewalled. Well, you can set it to be firewalled, presumably. It's just a more secure way of running the same content without the vulnerabilities of a web browser being in place, presumably. So that also allows for additional functionality that you might not find in the standard web version of the same content, which is another improvement too. Some other changes were the vanilla version of GNOME Shell as an option, which was interesting. I don't know if that's something you can pick after you install or what the deal is, but apparently that was an available thing in Ubuntu 12.10. In addition, there were wraparound dialogues and toolbars for the HUD, although I've never really triggered the HUD before, so I don't think I'm going to be able to demonstrate that, which kind of sucks because, of course, yeah, that's something that was noted as a change. In addition, when this OS was announced back on the 23rd of April 2012 by Mark Shuttleworth, he announced a refreshed look with improved iconography and typography, and we'll more than likely see that as we jump into Unity during the live installation. Although, I'm not too sure about that particular thing. We might wait until after we install it, because we might just jump straight into the installation utility and then install VMware tools and such, and so on and so forth, before we see all those changes. And finally, the last big controversial feature was the sort of search lenses that were used. And it was supposed to include some things like Amazon inside of those search lenses, as they were called, for searching Amazon. Now this, of course, brought up this huge privacy controversy thing with Canonical, especially in the EU, European Union. Really the biggest thing was privacy, key logging, adware, that sort of stuff. Kind of like what Windows 10 had in its launch day of 2015, where a lot of people with Cortana and the keyboard logging and the constant phone calling home that Windows 10 had and still has today, it was a big deal, and it was certainly something that they had to put up with back with Ubuntu 12.10, because a lot of people freaked out about this thing. Now, yes, you could turn it off, but of course, people don't listen, people don't read, and people don't perform certain actions. And so people are going to go nuts when they hear about this feature that could potentially keylog when they go to search on Amazon instead of their search function potentially searching for files or something like that, which was a big deal, especially when the whole Amazon search lens thing was introduced in a prior version of Ubuntu, and people just went nuts over this whole thing, and they had to take it out, I think. I don't remember back to that video, but that was presumably what happened. But anyway, so definitely this feature caused the Ubuntu devs to make this graphical user interface option to turn off all these features because people wouldn't stop complaining. And that is the reality you face with making software features. Apple's been there, Microsoft has been there, Google has been there, Amazon's been there, everybody has been there. It's nothing new. Controversy is a real big thing. Every freaking product launch nowadays, if you couldn't think about it, has a lot of controversy. This was no exception. And of course, interestingly, and if I read further in my notes, the Amazon search lens feature, it actually violated the European Directive 95/46/EC on data privacy because it was an included feature without the permission from the user, and it broke the directive. So, yeah, you can bet your ass that the EU was in on that one. So that's probably what forced the whole GUI disable method in a later update. So, yeah, it was a big deal. It was a very big deal back in the day. With that having been said, that is pretty much all there is to say so far about Ubuntu 12.10 Quantal Quetzal. So, we'll briefly take a look at the website, and then we'll fire it up and take a look at it. So if you watch my series so far, you'll know that this is a pretty familiar site ever since like the Ubuntu 6.06 days and whatnot, where we take a look at the Ubuntu website. Your wish is our command. The all-new Ubuntu 12.10 is out now. And I love how the Facebook like button is kind of getting cut off there because this is an archived website. Interestingly, also, I noticed this. They changed the computer to a Lenovo of some kind. I would guess an IdeaPad, like a... Oh god, I can't even read the model number. Is that like a U300S or something like that? Somebody look that up and tell me what it is in the comment section below if you know anything about Lenovo's better than I do. Because the only Lenovo that I've used that is semi-modern was a Lenovo G780, and God, I miss that machine, but I also don't miss that machine. And let's be honest, none of the G-series machines were really that great to begin with, and the G780 was no exception, but man, I miss that quad-core i7, man. That thing was a beast back in the day, and it still could hold its own today against my MacBook Pro, which says a lot about those Ivy Bridge i7s. But anyway, getting back on topic, they redesigned some of the icons on their website, especially this one for the cloud and OpenStack for business. And then they also had this new tour, which I hope we'll get to see when we install the operating system. And in addition, they talk about some of the features in Ubuntu. So let's take a look at the Ubuntu thing itself. They did redesign some of these buttons up here at the top a little bit. Back at it again with the familiar "My Ubuntu setup is faster than PC and prettier than Mac" quote from the New York Times. So, yeah. Free upgrades for life, built-in security, Ubuntu One Music Store, and thousands of free apps. Of course, that is all in no particular order. I still can't get over that stupid-looking Windows logo. Anyway, let's see what else there is on this website. Let's kind of diversify this a little bit. Let's take a look at some of these other things. Let's check out the cloud, for example. I'm not going to do these for too terribly long because I want to get into the operating system and get this over with. But I will take a look at some of the different pages on this website because it is nice to diversify a little bit and see what's new. So OpenStack, Canonical represents Ubuntu on the OpenStack Foundation, and a working private cloud for just $9,000, and it's guaranteed to be up and running within 5 days. Now that's an impressive feat. I'm not going to lie, that is very impressive, both on a cost standpoint and on the time to deployment standpoint. That's impressive. Of course, there's Windows Azure. There's also some stats if you're into that sort of thing. I'll be probably joining into this sort of thing here in the near future, probably working on that stuff after I get out of college, but no guarantees on that. But with that having been said, that's the website, so let's get into the operating system. And here we go, old familiar purple bootloader, and I'm going to click my mouse in there so we don't have to look at it. Now, I don't know if this boot screen in particular got some kind of a facelift that I wasn't, overly aware of, because this looks similar to what they use today, and to be honest, it really didn't change much back in the day as it does nowadays. I didn't really see the major improvements in the Ubuntu derivatives like Kubuntu and Lubuntu, those in particular, man. Ooh, we got the drums. Is that actually still a thing in Ubuntu 12.10? I forgot about that. I don't have my headphones plugged in, so all the sound's coming out of the soundbar on my monitor, so it's always interesting that something like that comes up. I don't know why there's 2 keyboard locales up there. That's kind of bizarre. Why is that? Oh, interesting. So if you had a touchscreen machine, because back in the day those were a popular thing to have, or touchscreens in a computer, I suppose you could probably enable an on-screen keyboard. Okay, so that's probably why there's 2 keyboard things up there. Now that kind of makes sense. Although it doesn't really make sense that they have both of them up there at the same time, but whatever. Now, unlike Ubuntu 12.04 LTS, I doubt the updates are still going to be up for this, but just because I actually had good luck with Ubuntu 12.04 LTS, and actually finding that the updates are still there for some reason, probably because of the Advantage customers, let's try it. Let's press our luck. Let's see if we get updates. I don't think so, but hey, one can only believe so much. No detected operating systems. Yes, we're going to erase the disk. This looks a little bit different compared to 12.04 LTS. This looks pretty much like modern day Ubuntu. Looks no different. Yep, Los Angeles time zone, US keyboard layout. I'm going to diversify things a little bit. Let's select the Macintosh keyboard layout, because technically I am on a Macintosh recording this video, if you haven't already figured that out.
And let's just pick ourselves the lovely cat, because I don't have my webcam enabled.
Alright, there's the lovely Quantal Quetzal. Fast and full of new features, the latest version of Ubuntu makes computing easier than ever. Here are just a few cool new things to look out for. Let's see what's new in the slideshow here. I'll actually go ahead and read the descriptions on this one, just because why not. Say goodbye to searching the web for new software. With Ubuntu Software Center, you can find and install new apps with ease. Just type in what you're looking for, or explore categories such as science, education, and games, alongside help or reviews from other users. Shotwell is a handy photo manager. Yeah, I get that. That looks pretty much the same. Ubuntu One gives you 5 gigs of free cloud storage to access your files, share your photos, and stream your music to your computers, tablets, and smartphones. Any photo you take appears on all your devices the instant you take it. Ubuntu One runs on Ubuntu, Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and the web, just like every cloud service should be. Of course, there's the Rhythmbox music player, there's GWibber for your connected social media stuff, and good old Firefox. I wonder if that YouTube account, Celebrate Ubuntu, is actually still up. Probably is. Of course, you have your LibreOffice. Now, interestingly, and I thought this was weird, in earlier releases of Ubuntu, they actually like sort of use this screen here to tease future improvements in the pipeline. And I know this was the case because in one of the LibreOffice Impress slides, it showed 1804 as being Bionic Beaver, and then 18.10 was C. Because obviously they didn't come up with Cosmic Cuttlefish at the time, or they didn't want to release the Cosmic Cuttlefish name, so they just called it C for its beta and alphas. So just something interesting to note there. Watch out on those LibreOffice slides because they usually put in some Easter eggs, which is to no surprise. Of course, they talk about appearance settings and all that stuff, which is nothing new. And, of course, they advertise their forums, and, well, that's about it. So, I'm going to go ahead and shut up and let this finish, and I will come back once we are at the login screen, I think. I think that's pretty interesting. And here we are at the slightly improved login screen. It's got the drum sounds, of course. It kind of scared the crap out of me. I wasn't expecting it to be that loud, but that's my fault for leaving the speakers up. Anyway, so here we are. Interestingly, there's no option to select a session. Is that up here somewhere, or how do we check how to change this? I guess you don't. Interesting. I guess you switch that from within the settings or something. Well, maybe you can't. But anyway. Okay, so there we are. Now, I do notice a little bit of a difference with the UI. The icons, they have this transparent bubble around them instead of being the color-keyed icon they used to have. And the Unity sidebar here actually collapses with a pretty cool design, I think, when you're not actually using it. So that's pretty neat. Let's take a look at the dash. And the dash, I believe, is full screen now. I need to go and change the display resolution. So let's see if I can do that real quick, because that's kind of annoying. Also, the system settings looks pretty good, I think. So let's go ahead and change this to 19... I can't even pick 1920 by 1080. That's annoying. Let's just do 1360 by 768 for now. That's fine. And keep this configuration. I think I'll go ahead and install VMware Tools because I like to do that. It's completely unnecessary, but... Oh, incomplete language support. The language support files for your selected language seem to be incomplete. Well, whose fault was it to not install the proper language support? Not mine. Anyway, yeah, go ahead and run this action now. That's fine, whatever. I don't know why it needs to insist on me installing different versions of English. Whatever, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. I think what we'll go ahead and do is copy that, put it onto the desktop, and we'll see if we can get VMware Tools going here. Alright, and we are back with VMware Tools installed, so that's pretty nice, I'd say. So, let's see what Firefox version we're running. It is a little on the slow side, so that is kind of sucky. I don't think it updated the X Windows driver, so we're still stuck with whatever frame buffer it's using, which is incredibly slow. But at least we have native screen resolution, so I'll take it for what it is. But it is not fast by any means. And I think that's a VMware Tools limitation, so I'm not going to go ahead and criticize Ubuntu or VMware for this, because, well, again, this is an old distribution, so whatever. But yeah, we're running Firefox 16, which wasn't uncommon for the time, and let's see. What's interesting is that the dash is now full screen, has a nice little glow effect for each stack. I would guess that's what that's called. Of course, you can control how big the dash is by this window control in the top left, which I believe was there before, but by default it goes full screen now. And Let's see what's inside the applications thing. Yeah, they still collapse the applications thing down, which is really weird. I don't know why they do that. They did fix this in later versions of Unity, thank God, because I think this design is really stupid where they have all the apps collapsed. Why not just show all the applications that you have installed when you want to go and look for it? I never figured out why that made sense. But anyway, you can see the Amazon search lenses here, so I guess we can go ahead and check that out. And interestingly, it actually loaded up Amazon somewhat perfectly fine. Obviously, it has the wrong zip code, but it kind of loaded. It is by no means... Yeah, it's definitely not loaded correctly. Anyway, enough of that tangent. That's enough Firefox, and let's see what else is different. Let's check out LibreOffice real quick. Ooh, we got a nice green splash screen there. It looks pretty nice, and oh, it's been updated now to show the menu up in the top. Ah, okay. What is this? LibreOffice 3.6.2.2. LibreOffice is a modern, easy-to-use, open-source productivity suite for word processing, spreadsheets, presentations, and more. And also used for confusing users with your menu on the top of the screen, where they least expect it. I'm just kidding. There's Ubuntu 1 Music. I wonder if that actually still opens up to anything. Oh, it opens Firefox. Okay, I thought it was its own standalone application, but maybe this is an example of a web app. I don't know if it's still going to work, because, I mean, this distribution is over 6 years old now, but maybe it might work. Might at least load up things saying, yeah, this doesn't work anymore, but... doesn't work anymore. Interesting. I almost wonder if they discontinued that form of the web app. I guess we'll find that out in later Ubuntu versions. Let's see, what does Ubuntu 1 bring up here? I still need to create an Ubuntu 1 account so I can test out these older Ubuntu 1 things and see if they actually still load anything. I don't think so, but hey, you know, one can only dream about that sort of stuff. It doesn't appear to load into anything because it doesn't seem to work. Alright, well, I guess that was pretty disappointing. Let's check the Software Center then. Alright, well, at least the Software Center loads. What is new? I don't actually know, because there's nothing there. Right. I think this has been discontinued for this OS. Again, no surprise. So, yeah. I think that's about going to wrap it up for Ubuntu 12.10. So, I'm going to shut down this virtual machine. So I appreciate you all coming to watch, and I will see you all in the next one.